So we're moving in, we're in that smoothie moment, and I call that smoothie our goal setting process. So here I'm going to take you through steps. I summarized these, but I'm going to give you other resources that are going to be able to trigger things in your mind to help you set your goals. So in the first stage, we have define your why. Why is, why are you setting that goal? Why do you want to achieve that goal? And then when we're looking at this step, we look at why do you want to achieve that? And this should be when you're focusing on yourself, you as you, what is it that you want to achieve that makes you happy, not what someone wants to achieve for them. For example, you're in a family and everyone has a PhD. And then you feel it's a certain burden on you that you need to work towards a PhD because everyone in the family has done that. But then in the line of your life that you've chosen, you don't really need it, or it doesn't even excite you that much. So when you're setting goals, instead of you setting aside certain 100 millions or something to do a PhD and all the research involved, you're going to write down things that you think you should achieve. And then when you're writing these things down, you're going to realize some of them don't even excite you. You only have them, they're only pressing because of other people. Like your parents want you to do an MBA, your family wants you to do a PhD, but it doesn't really excite you. So this is a process that you're going to go through. And then when we're doing our why, this is the only point that I'm allowing you to fantasize. When you're creating fantasies, you're imagining all the weird things, even if your mind is like, that is unachievable. This is the only point where you do that, because if it excites you, later we're going to look at a process of how you can turn that into unachievable things. So here you're going to write a vision for your life. Where do you really want to go? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? Who do you want to be with? What do you want to achieve? And this should be self-centered. You should be as selfish as possible at this point. Remember, we're talking about intentional living. You're living a life that you've set for yourself, not a life that your family, your government, or whatever has determined for you. This is the point where you're allowed to be selfish. Set things that make you happy, things that if you explain it to someone, they can't be able to even understand it. You do it in a way of me telling you how I want to do a tailoring course. If I tell you that, you look at me like how do you even set aside money to do such a thing? Like, it doesn't make sense for someone. That is how much this why should mean. You should be able to remember everything that you write at the first instance of someone waking you up and you're like, what do you want to achieve in life? You should be able to tell them, this is what I want to do with my life. When you're doing this, don't mind about all the resources that are available. You don't mind about your history. Don't mind about the people you've not met. Assume you have a magic wand and you can just swing it and that thing comes into action. That is what you're supposed to be doing at this point. And previously, I used to have a book, call it my dream book. So I write weird things that I want to do, but I think I no longer want to to write these things down, because someone might come across it and they realize I'm actually a weird person. Not that I feel shy being weird, but so we have technology. You can just dream about things and send them to yourself via email. Send yourself messages. It used to be weird. So my husband sends himself messages. Previously, I used to find it weird, but now I do it a lot because I have 2 lines on WhatsApp, and I always use one line to send messages on the other, and it helps a lot. There are those things that come into your mind at a certain point, and you don't ever want to forget it. So maybe you can pick that up, send yourself messages, send yourself emails of the weirdest things that cross your mind, as long as they excite you. That is the first point at goal setting. And then in this point, and the second point, you're going to determine your major focus areas. And then when you're talking about major focus areas, I want you to realize that in life, we are like an ecosystem. I called it an ecosystem here, but we have so many things that make us human. We have a spiritual part, we have a physical part, and then in the physical, we have a financial side, we have a family side, we have a social side, all those things. So when you're setting goals, many people fail at this point because you're listing. You're like, well, I'm supposed to do this for my family. This year I'm supposed to do a spiritual trip to Mecca for the Muslims, or I'm supposed to go and visit holy area of Israel, and then I'm supposed to save this and so amount of money. So you find yourself having 30 goals because you decided to look at all the different areas in life. But then not all these areas are equally demanding. Sometimes, well, you've done so much and your family is sort of stable, like there is no kind of a lot of effort needed from you because everything is working out well. You've mastered a certain way that you're dealing with your family and then making everything work for you. And then sometimes maybe you have all your finances in order, you set all these kinds of systems in place. You don't feel so compelled to save. You have a certain sort of vision written down on your financial side. So yeah, you don't need to press on that a lot. And then for the believers, you have a spiritual side and you're like, oh, maybe in the previous year, I've not really grown my spiritual side. So this is going to be the major focus for me this year. So I'm going to maybe create a quiet time of this. I'm going to find a lot of extra material for myself. So you're going to first list down all the things you want to achieve, get the most pressing strictly. We're not saying others are not important, but we're saying this is more important than the other. And then you're going to reduce these goals to very few goals as much as possible. I don't want someone, you will find so many personal growth people telling you need to focus on all areas of life. But if you do that, you're going to get overwhelmed. So I usually want people to set just 5 goals for the year. And then that's it. And then just work and make intentional steps for those 5 goals. And when you take them off, then, well, the others didn't die. They're still there. So get on with them, work on them. Instead of you setting for yourself 30 goals that cut across all these different areas of life, and then you're going to get overwhelmed, frustrated, and then you just throw everything down and get comfortable in your comfortable life. And then I'm looking at the SMART option here. So this is everywhere. We've seen it, specific goals, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound sort of thing. If I'm not going to expound more on this because we've seen it a lot. But then I want to summarize that with this bullet here. You should write your goal to make sure a young kid can be able to understand your goal. Don't use a lot of English, it's your goal. Don't use a lot of jargon. Make sure if you tell your goal to a young kid, they can be able to tell it to you back. And that kid, if you achieve that goal, that kid should be able to tell you that, yes, you achieved that goal. Make it as simple as that. Here, when I was talking about define your why, when I allowed you to fantasize, you're going to have a million things on your list. You might even find yourself having 100 things in the email. Get a quiet time before the year ends and just allow yourself to dream away. Write all the weird things that you have. And then in these weird things, you're going to just pick out a few that you want to achieve in a year. And then those few that you've chosen, those are the ones that you should subject to all these other things, to these other steps down. So when you're looking at a step of application, after you've written down these things that you want to achieve, you're supposed to take action actually and work towards achieving these goals. And then the illustration I have this is even the strongest missile that has ever been built is useless until it is launched. So you're in war and then they're telling us you have the strongest missile in place. But then guess what? It's useless and it's not helping you if you've not launched the missile. That works for goal setting. If you've had this whole thought process and you've thought of your goals, you've set the different tasks that you're supposed to do to achieve these goals, and you've written down in a beautiful piece of paper, but then if they just remain there and you don't make intentional steps towards achieving them, you're having a useless missile. And guess what? You're going to get a fixed mindset. And I said a fixed mindset kills. So make sure whatever goal you've set the things that you're supposed to do on a daily. I'm going to tell you, like, we work on our goals every day, because if you don't, your mind is going to drift. You're not going to be in the driver's seat. If you're not driving the car, you're just drifting and you don't have a target. On step 5, we're looking at ongoing assessment. When you set goals, life is not stunted. The environment in which you set your goal is going to shift. Imagine people who had set goals for 2020. If you look at the business side, I have clients who had set their whole budgets, and then COVID came, and then they threw their budgets and whole forecasts out of the window because the environment changed between when they set their goals and the actual time period when they're supposed to achieve those goals. So the same is going to happen to you because you're living on this planet and things change. So as you've set your goals, life is going to change. Maybe you set a goal of traveling once a month. Life happens, you find a wife, you marry that person, you get kids, and you find yourself, well, it looks like this year I'm not going to be able to travel every month. So how do I modify this? So you go back to your goals, and then you change maybe from monthly, you say, I'll just travel every after 6 months, or I'll just travel once a year. So this happens. You're supposed to do this as time advances. And I say, look at your goals. I look at my goals on a daily because I just wrote them down and hung them on a certain piece of paper, and I look at them daily. So this helps because if anything changes, you're able to be like, oh, I have this goal and then this has changed. So I'm supposed to modify, cancel that goal, put in something new. Some goals are achieved earlier. You might have set a goal and you thought it's going to take you a year, but then you're like so gazelle intense, and then you achieve it in 1 month instead of a year. And then what are you going to do with the rest of the year? Remember, I told you, if you don't tell your brain what to do, it's going to find for itself what to do and it will implement that. So it's supposed to go back on the drawing board, replace it with something new, and then give a command to your brain that, well, this has been achieved, and then this is what we're going for after. And then at the evaluation stage, well, the year's ended because I usually set goals for a year. I don't set daily goals. I don't know, whatever you prefer for yourself. You can have daily, yearly, weekly, whatever you'll be comfortable with, depending on your life situation. You're supposed to go back and actually assess. You're like, I had told myself I'm supposed to learn a new language in 6 months. 1 month down the road, what is happening? Have I enrolled in any classes? Have I made any effort? 2 months down the road, okay, 6 months down the road, yes, I enrolled for classes. Do I have the level of proficiency that I was targeting for? That is what you're looking at the evaluation. The moment you do this, you're going to realize that maybe you need to modify some goals, you need to modify the time period, you need to throw in more resources, something that you thought is going to cost you 100K is going to cost you 20K, so you need to 120K, so you need to throw more money at it. All that is going to happen at evaluation. And remember, you cannot evaluate something that you don't have. So you have to first set the goals, make intentional steps towards achieving them, and then you'll be able to evaluate whether you have achieved a certain goal. And if you haven't, that is the way we move forward. And then there is this magic that I realize here. Magic happens between a head and a hand. If you have things in your head, they are fantasies until you write them down. If you have goals in your head, you're just at level 1. You're just thinking about things. Some of them may not be achievable. Some of them are not in the correct order of priority. So until you write them down, you realize that, okay, I have, say, this amount of resources with me. I want to renovate my home. I want to travel the world. I want to buy this and this. Until you write those things down, there's no way you're going to realize which one is more pressing and which one is not. And you'll not be able to evaluate if you're moving ahead or staying stunted. And then at this point, I also mentioned that if you're married, you're not supposed to set goals as if you were single, because you're going to get conflict, a lot of conflict. So at goal setting in a marriage situation, I always encourage people, get your partner involved. If you don't, you're going to be conflicted. How does this happen? For example, I've told myself, in 6 months, I want to get 20 million and I want to invest in something like this and this. And then my partner on the other side is like, no, in 2 months, I want to spend 8 million and I want to renovate our home. Guess what? When you get the 20 million, your partner is going to see you having 20 million on your account, and then they're going to see that money sleeping. They're going to call it sleeping because they're not seeing you spending it. Maybe you even have different financial sort of thought process, like you have different financial values. So they're going to see as though you don't care about their priorities. That is because you didn't align this well. Same applies to this ecosystem I said. Your goals should be in balance, the goals that you set. You cannot say you want to travel the world in a certain year, and in the same year you want to invest so and so. So those are sort of conflicted-ish. Like if you don't sort of align them well to throw money specifically to something, like if you're traveling the world and it's going to cost you 500 million, and then your bank is going to reduce by the same amount. So you have to equally be making twice as much for you to achieve both. If you set them in conflict with each other, if you say you want to increase, say the time you're allocating to your friends, and at the same time you want to increase the time you're allocating to your family, it's going to conflict in some way because you really have very little time, like 24 hours in a day. The more time you give one, it reduces the time you give the other. So make sure you focus on that balance. If any goal conflicts, it's going to create a short circuit situation that I'm going to explain in this slide. So in this slide, we're talking about flat tire moments. And I'm calling them flat tire because these are moments where, yes, we've set our goals. Yes, we've been making intentional steps, but then we feel stuck. Like, I was supposed to do this, but then I don't even know how to proceed. These are moments that we're looking at. So when you ever get to this situation, and yes, you're going to find this situation if you've set challenging goals. Remember, you're not supposed to, the low-hanging fruits are nice, and yes, you should achieve them, and yes, they should be on your list, but also get challenging things, because that's the best way you're going to propel yourself, and then you'll be sort of happy and have that sense of or sense of an achiever. So when you reach at this point, I want you to remember that when you're scared, keep your hands on the wheel. You're in control. I'm saying this because of that example I told you, where like our life is like in a car, in an Uber. Yeah, you're in the back seat and then you're thinking there is someone driving. It's only at a point when you realize there is actually no driver, you're just drifting through life, you're drifting through space, and your life is taking any direction. The moment you realize there is no driver, you're supposed to get to the front, get on the wheel, because it's supposed to be driven, supposed to take control. So if you reach this point and you feel like giving up, your brain should tell you that you're just moving from the front seat and you're going back to the back seat. When you go to the back seat, you're going to get into that stagnant situation. What happens is not going to work for you. You're going back in the mindset that we're talking about of having a fixed mindset. You're going to get comfortable with non-challenging situations. Remember, comfort is an enemy of success. So when you get to this point, I want you to just keep your hands on the wheel and just keep driving, because you're in control. You determine what happens to you.